dad couldn't afford to send me to university. I was accepted at UCT, but I couldn't afford to go. By hook, by crook, I was asked to join UCT as finance director. But power can also be your worst enemy. And I've seen power be abused. In every single boardroom I sat in, it was a person like me that couldn't get in. It was a person like me that was not allowed to get in. And now I was holding the purse strings. Late in that year, I resigned with nothing. Literally just a dream. The Rand Euro was not great. My factory was built incorrectly. I chose the wrong partners. I can give you a list of mistakes I made. You don't need money. You don't need a big fancy house. You don't need a big fancy car. You don't need anything to be happy.
Ash, a very, very warm welcome to you. I'm wildly excited to be chatting with you today. You're a CEO with 35 plus years experience, an author, an entrepreneur, a lecturer. You have sat on the boards of 10 plus organizations. You have, built a career that has traversed boardrooms, multi-billion rand deal rooms, private equity, public institutions. I mean, what has the man not done, And over the last 9 or so months of getting to know you, I think what has really struck us at Capital is the story behind the resume, the story behind this very powerful financial executive. And that is the story of a young man who grew up in apartheid South Africa, who grew up in the Cape Flats, and who through endless wells of resilience, fortitude, and blimmin' hard work has ended up becoming one of our country's finest financial leaders. So we are very honored to have you in studio today. Thank you for joining us. So Ash, take us right back to the very beginning of your illustrious career. Take us back to you being a young guy growing up in the context that you did. How did the journey of traversing from the Cape Flats to becoming a CFO to, being in these extremely prestigious boardrooms, what has that given you that others just simply do not have?
I'll take you back to when I was 12 years old. Standard 5, grade 7. My teacher said to the class, what would you guys like to become one day? And uncles and aunts were nurses and teachers and priests and that sort of thing. And that's all I knew.
Professions, right?
Professions, really. But nothing out there. And I then went to my dad and asked him, and he said, become a director. And I said, but what is a director?
Yes,
He said, what is a director? And he then asked his finance director, and he said, tell your son to become a chartered accountant. And literally within a second, I decided to become a chartered accountant. I had no idea what it meant. My dad didn't know what it meant. But the message was that I could travel the world, I could get into boardrooms, and I could influence people, and I could influence my society. And that effectively was the start.
Now, Ash, were you good at maths at that time? I mean, Standard 5, you're basically adding and doing long division.
I'd put myself as a little naughty boy at the back of the classroom.
Yeah.
But I had the ability to be able to still top the class somehow. If I wanted to get third in the class, I can do that for myself. If I wanted to be first, I could push myself. And so I had that ability to play with what it is I wanted to be. And then I went to high school. And effectively, I said I'm going to do accounting and business economics and economics. Luckily for me, the principal wanted our school to have commercial subjects. And that was me. I was good at geography, good at science. But
we almost did exactly the same subjects, you and I, minus the science, economics, business economics, geography. That's what I graduated high school with.
So fellow CA.
Yeah, well, hardly. So from high school then?
Yeah, but that was the journey. And my dad couldn't afford to send me to university. I was accepted at UCT, but I couldn't afford to go. And then through trial and error, I discovered that I could do a 5-year stint of articles if I went straight from school, and I applied on my own. Remember those days with the classifieds, I had to go through with my finger, and I found an ad. And I joined the auditing firm, and I started my 5-year contract, became a chartered accountant eventually. I was probably one of the first 30 in the country at the time. I'm talking sort of late 90s now, late 80s. And then started my career. But to be honest with you, every step of the way was a learning. I never knew anything, nothing. Nobody could tell me anything. So I learned from my peers, those who were sitting next to me. I spoke to my partners and asked them what should my next step be. And that's how I learned.
as a segue straight into your time at UCT. Now, you were Executive Financial Director there from 2009, I think?
No, 2015 effectively, but I
there we
joined
go.
UCT 2013.
I mean, how poignant a segue that as a young man, did you say you'd gotten into UCT but weren't able to afford the fees, and a hop, skip and a jump
Correct.
later, there you are sitting, I suppose, holding the bursa strings at UCT. Talk to us about, your sense of that reflection.
Yeah, it was a dream for me to always go to the number one university on the African continent. But way back then in the 80s, we were not allowed to go. We needed permission to go. I got in based on my results and my desire to get in. And because of the issues of South Africa back then, my dad couldn't afford to send me there. But life has a funny way of dealing with what is meant to be. And so I went the route and became a chartered accountant. And by hook or by crook, I was asked to join UCT as finance director. And effectively, my predecessor was the professor of accounting at UCT. So he studied at private school, went to university at UCT, and then became an employee and a professor. And he then stepped into the role to fix UCT's finances. But he did it very, very well, but very much from a theoretical perspective and laying the foundation. What the then VC wanted was an entrepreneurial CFO with some vision of entrepreneurship. And that's how I managed to be approached. I was actually approached and headhunted for the job. I'd never thought I would get it, I must be honest with you. I mean, what do I know about higher education? I couldn't even go to UCT. But the very interesting part is that UCT, the academia within UCT would like their executives to have titles in front of their name. My titles were behind my name, at the end of my name. So I wasn't a professor. I'm not a professor. I don't profess to want to be a professor. But I came with skills and I came with a vision. And yeah, I must be honest with you, when I look back, did I leave UCT in a better place? Yes, the answer is yes, financially I did. But I had to traverse a few things because it was a person like me that couldn't get in. It was a person like me that was not allowed to get in.
Yeah.
And now I was holding the purse strings and making sure that my kids and their kids and their kids' kids would be able to come to UCT eventually. And so it was important that I look after the finances and leave the university in a better state than I found it. And I can say confidently that I did.
I'm going to tell the numbers because I know you're not going to. So there was an endowment of 4 billion rand, I think, when you got there, and you left that double, I mean, at a quantum of 8 billion rand, which is just an extraordinary achievement, an amazing legacy to leave. Ash, when you were there at that very difficult time, I mean, I think you had, judging from what I saw on LinkedIn yesterday, you had been in this executive financial directorship, that role for, I mean, call it 7 months before Fees Must Fall took hold. What did you learn about leadership in that time? And what was it like going to work every day in that context?
Yeah, very interesting. Leadership is not about titles, effectively. I think leadership is more about humility. And if you know who you are and you walk through life with those values, whether it is in your social scene or whether it's in the boardroom, I think humility needs to come through at all times. And I am a professional, and my forte is finance. And my job and responsibility and accountability was to ensure financial sustainability. But linked to that is bringing the Ashley through, in that people like Ashley could never afford to get there and were never allowed to be there. And I could really understand the core. Yes, there were kids who were out of hand and really missing the true essence of what protest action was about and why they needed to protest. And we had differences, and it's okay to have differences. But my job was not about solving today's problem. It was ensuring that there was sustainability into the future, making sure that many kids of South Africa could enter the doors of UCT. And so I needed to stand firm professionally to making sure that fees must be paid. It's the only way we're going to get to where we need to be. But how do you balance that with the sector in the community that cannot afford? And so the dialogue was quite important, me engaging with students. And so I was fortunate, being not from a privileged race, I was fortunate to work and socialize with people from humble upbringings. And so titles never made a person and doesn't make a person. It is really the humility and the values. And so my mother was a machinist. My father was an admin clerk. But the values far exceeded that of fellow directors I had in the boardroom, because titles don't make a man. It is the values that do.
Absolutely. Ash, I think there's something really very special about this position that you were in, that you were able to, one, stand and hold responsibility towards the institution, which is one in which fees needed to be paid. That was the position that you needed to hold in order to enable the institution to stay on.
Correct.
For generations to come, and also understand in a way that most wouldn't have been able to understand what it was like to be someone from an environment, a background, a context in which you had every academic nous, you had the ability, but you just didn't have the fees to get into that context. What I love so much about that story is that you got there anyway, in, the most important seat in the house, and left an extraordinary legacy there. I want to rewind just a little bit to the waterfront. So I had a friend stay with me recently, this Colombian American friend from the USA, and obviously the first thing on the list is do Lion's Head and then go to the waterfront. It's iconic. I mean, what a destination. And I was reading up about it. Some 25 million people went through there last year. I think in the December, about 3 million people. That's why you don't catch me anywhere near there in the December. And I want to find out what it was like to be the chief financial officer of the waterfront. What did you learn about significant value creation in your time there?
An absolute honor and privilege to be a fellow executive. To be part of the most iconic tourist destination on the African continent. Wow, it's I can only say wow. But once again, one must never take for granted the privilege that you are gifted in life. The waterfront is a very, very special place. It is caught up between the mountain and the sea, and there's a spirit that lives in the waterfront.
There is a spirit that lives. Even as a local, you go there and there's just something. You don't feel like you're going to bog standard mall. There's something very special about it.
100%. And so the waterfront is built for the locals, and the locals make the waterfront. There are many people that think the waterfront is made for tourism. It is not so. And so if you can visualize that the locals is in the theatre on the stage, and the tourists are coming to the theatre, effectively.
I like that analogy.
Right? And that for me is the true analogy. It's a theatre of dreams. And so when you get a position like the CFO of the waterfront, sustainability is important. All the fundamentals of being a CFO comes to the fore. But once again, like the story of UCT, the waterfront, we don't exist until the next sale. We exist in perpetuity, because the waterfront will belong to Cape Townians, it will belong to South Africa, and will belong to Africa. And we are very, very proud, as Cape Townians, we're very proud. But I was very, very fortunate 2 days ago to have a luncheon with my ex-colleagues from the waterfront.
I saw your post on LinkedIn. I mean, I was basically tearing up over it. You could feel the emotion coming through.
It was fantastic. And just to be at the restaurant, one of the first restaurants, Den Anker, at the waterfront, and we would always have a lunch there every single year. And post us leaving the waterfront, we still go there every year for the luncheon. But this year, in conjunction with the visionary David Jack, we then took the new CEO for lunch. And we just joked and we laughed and we shared our vision and our dreams. But just to be present within that context, to still feel that energy, it is way more than the title of being a CFO. It was a privilege and responsibility that I would always hold dear.
Absolutely. And I mean, part of that was also dealing with and facilitating an astronomical deal that unfolded. And I mean, I have to say the number because, again, it'll be my job to big up your resume. But I mean, that was a transaction in excess of 7 billion rand to, that investment consortium. I think the number's obviously wildly impressive, but what do you do in that context? Do you pop champagne? Is it celebration? Is it relief? Like, what are the emotions in the room when something like that, when they go, right, the deal's been done, the ink is drying? What does that feel like?
It's an inner smile and tension, because when you hand over the baton, you're not entirely sure whether they're going to believe in the dream in the same way. And we sold it to the wrong people initially. They never cared about the waterfront. We sold it to foreigners. And it's only now back in the hands of South Africans again. Funny enough, then it was the largest sale in the history of South Africa, and the second largest.
It would be at that number. It would be.
It then became the second largest because the first, the one that hit number one spot was the resale of the waterfront, and it still maintains the number one spot as the largest sale in the history of South Africa, real estate sale.
What was that?
So it was resold for 10 billion, and it's probably worth in the region of about 15, closer to 20 billion at the moment. So the guys are doing very, very well. But the dream came alive, effectively. But where the privilege really comes in over and above the being a Cape Townian and being from the Cape Flats and the waterfront being there for the locals, I was very privileged to do the very first journal entry in bringing the property value from Transnet Pension Fund into the waterfront. It is an honor that I created the company.
Yeah.
I was the first public officer of the waterfront. I created the first bank account. So the very first things in creating the company, and then coupling the vision and the strategy with that core governance. So when the waterfront gets sold and when they do transactions, and I read it in social media, it's heartwarming to know that I put pen to paper for creating the name and the registration number and the bank account, etc., etc. So yeah,
Absolutely.
It's heartwarming. But that is not what the waterfront is. We don't build the waterfront so that we can sell it, and value doesn't get created on the day of the sale. So the 7.1 is a fantastic number, but it's just a number. The true value gets created over time and in the small things. So I want to lift out the likes of a security guard and a cleaner, because that's where the value is when a cleaner and a security guard becomes ambassadors for the waterfront and becomes the ambassadors of Cape Town. And so for me, sitting in the boardroom, doing the deal, and by the way, I never did the deal, I was part of the facilitation of the deal. So that is not where the importance lies, because if the security guard doesn't do his or her job and the cleaner doesn't do his or her job, the value and the brand value will dip. And so it's a collective. And the reason why I say the waterfront is built for the locals, by the locals, is it will fall in the same way, but it will never fall, because we are a very proud community, a very proud nation. Go Porker!
And there he is.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it's just a phenomenal privilege and honor to be part of it.
I think you touch on something that we at Capital hold very close to our heart, which is that when an organization, be it the likes of the Waterfront or a company that's taken on private equity investment, right down to, startups, when you have a very clear story, and that story is lived, breathed, operationalized, built by everyone within the business, it's very, very powerful. To your point, the Waterfront is under the custodianship of everyone who works there. It's a group effort, and I think it's amazing that you have the humility to offer that perspective as someone who was in the very senior executive leagues at that organization. Ash, what is something that people don't understand or misunderstand about very high-level, big-ticket transactions and deals?
I think I mentioned earlier, the big-ticket number and the deal doesn't achieve its relevance and expose when the deal is made. It's a journey. And at the end of the day, it's people that make it. We can have loads of data, we can have loads of reports and spreadsheets, and the numbers may not lie on a spreadsheet. But the true value lies in the people. Data is but a compass. It gives you a mechanism to make a decision, but people make decisions. And sometimes we make good decisions, and sometimes we make bad decisions. And it's okay to make bad decisions as long as you don't make the same bad decision 2 or 3 times. I've learned my most from making bad decisions, because that's when you innovate. But value is created along a journey with a North Star in place. And if you bring everybody on board on your North Star, if everybody in your organization understands it, when you become the blue dot in the ecosystem, and being the blue dot, you're surrounded by many factors: processes, people, leadership, culture, the North Star, and you are just but a button and a dot in the midst of that ecosystem. And if you can see yourself always in that way, that you bring everybody and everything along with you, that's when value gets created. The numbers in the financial statements is but a consequence of all of that. It is not the deal. The deal is the process.
I think that's such a beautiful way of reflecting on the journey that a business goes on, that these inflection moments, be it a carve out, be it future investment, be it future exits, listings, whatever it might be, they are notches on the belt. And they're moments in the story of a broader collective effort by all the people at the heart of the business. Now, Ash, you did a very brave thing after your time at the Waterfront, which is that you leapt from the safety of a corporate job, in effect. You leapt from the executive leagues and you started a business. And not only did you start that business, but you raised, can I say the number?
Oh, guess so.
200 million rand for this startup, in effect, of yours. I have to just disclose, I barely raised 200 rand, let alone 200 million rand. Ash, tell us what that leap of faith has taught you.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to having a North Star, having a guiding vision. I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I always wanted to be a successful entrepreneur, whatever that means. And I think in society, financial success kind of defines it somehow. But for me, it was a lot bigger than that. And I carved my life out in 5 years since. Effectively, the first 5 years, get your qualification. The next 5 years, get your teeth really embedded.
Earn those stripes.
In what commercialization is all about. And then your next 5 years, get yourself into a senior role, which I did. And at 35, I became CFO of the Waterfront. So it was a big leap for me. I wanted to be CEO, to be honest with you, not necessarily of the Waterfront, but of a substantial company at the age of 40. But I was gifted this opportunity to start my own business. And renewable energy way back in 2005 was a big thing. Everyone was talking renewable energy except South Africa. And so we were behind the scenes. We were in the shadow of what the world was looking at from a renewable energy perspective. And I was gifted this opportunity, and I painted a picture on a piece of paper on the 18th of January 2005 with a colleague of mine, my then future partner. And I said, if we could follow this could be the dream. 6 months later, I decided I'm going to attempt this. But the only way I could do it was to give up my position as CFO of the Waterfront.
What a hard Sophie's choice.
I was in a very soft seat. I had the world at the tip of my fingers. I could easily have become CEO of a good listed company at the time. I had the vigor, I had the drive, but I kind of thought if I don't do it now, I'm probably never going to do it. And I just wanted to do it. And late in that year, I resigned with nothing. Literally just a dream. But I had the conviction that I could make it happen. Sadly, no one in South Africa wanted to buy my dream, and I managed to raise $25 million in the UK. Got that money on the 9th of October 2006.
That is in and of itself.
And then we started our business. But what a lesson! What a journey! Because I made so many mistakes.
Yeah.
So many mistakes. I was in and out of aeroplanes. doing deals in Europe. It was absolutely great fun. It was fantastic. But at the core, I was employing people. The factory was being built. We were making promises to utilities in Europe. But we made quite a few mistakes. But the world at large was also against me. It was the financial crisis worldwide in 2008. The oil price was 120. We're talking $120 now, but in 2008 it was $120. The rand euro was not great. My factory was built incorrectly. I chose the wrong partners. I can give you a list of mistakes I made. And then sadly it didn't work out. But when I look back now, probably the biggest lesson of my life. To be resilient, to have your conviction, to really break rank and go and do things for yourself. It probably didn't work out the way I wanted it to work out, but in reality it did. Maybe the billions in the bank is not the real answer, but I've got a wealth of experience, got a wealth of perspective that I probably would not have had I stayed in corporate. But it happened, and I can tell the story now. And what I can say is that I'm now part of a private equity company, and we're dealing with renewable energy, and I'm dealing with a company that was successful on the back of our failure back then. So in a funny kind of way, there's been a contribution to South Africa somehow.
Well, Ash, I mean, this seems to be the kind of story, the mega themes of your life so far seem to be that there are these incredible full circle moments.
Spiritual.
Yeah, there we go. On that very note, Ash, I think something that's always struck us in our conversations is your openness and awareness of synchronicity and coincidence and intuition and, dare I say, the woo-woo side of the world, which I have to say I found quite surprising given, Mr. Executive and your background in finance. Do you think that there's a role, and in what ways do you see the role of spirituality, intuition playing a significant part of business?
Raising $25 million and sitting in a boardroom is not our purpose. Our true purpose is what we are here for, trying to find that purpose, trying to remember why we are here. Being in a boardroom, doing private equity, doing deals is a consequence. It is not the reason, it's not the purpose. And so I use that as a mechanism to find my true purpose. There's no such thing as a coincidence. Everything has been laid out. We need to go and find it. And when we find it, we realize we've never found it. So you're always finding and finding
Sure.
and finding. And that's the magic of life. I'm not as excited about being an executive as I am about finding the true purpose, to be honest with you. I enjoy the journey, but it's only a conduit for me to find my true purpose and to be on the right journey. So I find spirituality part and parcel of who I am. It is the core of who I am. I'm not religious, but I'm first and foremost a spiritual being, having this fantastic opportunity to journey through life in the boardroom and to have a conversation with you and to meet people. But it's that purpose I'm after.
And then once you find that purpose, you'll reevaluate and keep searching.
100%. And if I don't find it and pass away, I'll come back and then come find
There
it.
you go, in a different version, maybe what would you come back as? Spirit
Maybe
animal
not this time as a blade of grass. I think I've been there. I probably wouldn't want to be a tree stump again, even though that foundation is so strong.
Yeah. I'm seeing lion.
Yeah, if you want
Yeah.
to, lion.
You're giving
Okay.
lion energy, Ash.
I don't know. It doesn't matter, to be
Yeah.
honest with you, whether you can fulfill your purpose as a blade of grass or whether you can fulfill it as a human being, whether it is a lion. The real beauty is when you fulfill it, isn't it?
There we go. Yeah. Absolutely. Ash, you recently moved into the world of private equity, or moved very deeply into the world of private equity. What has surprised you the most about the industry, the space, the sector?
There's a misconception that the economy in South Africa and worldwide is dominated by big business. I think big business plays a very important part in the economy. But when you look at mid-market private equity, which is the space I'm in, That's really the future of South Africa, is the future of where the world is economically. And even the traders on the ground, the smaller traders, the masses, that's where the hustle and the bustle of the true economy is. So there's a misconception. So I'm very privileged to be part of private equity, because we are shaping wannabe business people, people that are struggling to get there. They have their own North Star. And for me, what a privilege and honor to work with these executives and to help them create value. So we're creating value for institutions, and we as private equity is just a mechanism and a conduit to make that money for public institutions. But to help business people reach their dreams. They don't have the protection and the brand value of big corporates. So you have to create that value. And hence, what a privilege to work with yourself and Talia in this regard to help shape that brand value. But it's where the future lies. There's not a lot of trust put in private equity thus far, but I think it's going to shape it. If we can just get our governance and our policies right at the very highest political level, and they can open the doors and create the infrastructure for this to happen, then we don't have to struggle that much. But we are struggling to make it happen. But we're such a fantastic and resilient nation. We're going to pull through. We definitely will pull through. But it's not as easy as it could be. But private equity is definitely the future.
You know, when Talia and I started to work in private equity with capital, something that really struck us both is that, and I mean, maybe this is only true of mid-market South Africa, is that there's a huge amount of investment into, in inverted commas, boring businesses. And there's such beauty and power in these organizations that manufacture bricks or plastic or, you know, fertilizer, that are fundamentally the building blocks of our economy. And to think that you are now, you know, passing on wisdom and learnings to entrepreneurs who are building towards these building blocks of our economy is very powerful. You spoke about enjoying car rides with your management teams. So getting into a vehicle, you always say yes to hey, do you want to drive with me? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm a car lover. So I'm a ex BMW fanatic.
Why X? What happened?
Because I matured and grew up, and
Okay.
and that's a waste of money and a waste of time. So
Okay.
no, it is enjoyable. But jokes aside, when joining the private equity arena, and because I believe in people create value. The product is but a consequence of that. What I needed to do and wanted to do was to put executives one-on-one so they can share knowledge and they could collaborate. And what better way than to put them in a two-door convertible on a long stretch of road? Because when your boyishness, and I don't mean to be gender-centric here now, but when you put the guys in a two-seater, the boardroom disappears and that facade disappears. And when you're holding a steering wheel and you're going at 200 kilometers per hour, there's something else.
200? Ash.
Don't say that aloud.
No, we'll edit that out.
That's when a different person comes through. And so when you get to your destination, and I mean destination, you can interpret it in many different ways, but getting to the next coffee shop, you cannot stop talking about that ride. And suddenly that friendship then just becomes tighter and tighter. And so what I did was I would then change the navigator and the driver. So suddenly for the next leg, you are now the navigator and you're sitting with a new driver. At the end of that day, you have friendships. And people are now talking about things they would never have spoken about in the boardroom. And so I'm very privileged and very honored to tell you a little story that you may have seen a post on LinkedIn this week where there's been this beautiful, massive solar installation at one of our waste clients, and waste in terms of industry. And that deal emanated from that BMW two-seater drive 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. And that's the power of people and how people can make it happen. When you have a North Star and when you have a guiding vision, how you can make things happen. And so it may seem like a waste of money driving a two-seater BMW at 200 kilometers per hour. But if the end result is collaboration and a multi-million rand deal on the table, and everybody benefits through renewable energy and people and value and brand creation, then yeah, something must be working.
Something must be working. There's also something about walking with someone, and maybe driving and walking have this in common, that you are looking outward. You are not sitting and staring at each other across a boardroom, or, you're not in a corporate context. And there's a safety almost in speaking outward to the open road, to the path in front of you, and people relax in that kind of context. My sister's always been a big advocate of going on walks for first dates, because it just allows a different kind of dimension to enter the conversation, which I think is very smart. Ash, what have you learned about power from being in all these boardrooms? I think in some ways you've alluded to it, but a direct question there about your learnings around power and maybe even ego in these boardroom contexts.
As human beings, we can't deny the fact that we have ego. We can't deny the fact that we yearn for power. It's all about how you use power. And if you could use power, and if all of us could just use power to the benefit of the greater good, then power is fantastic. But power can also be your worst enemy. And so I've learned in the boardroom that use power to the benefit of all. And if you use power to motivate people and to build people, and through that building you create the value, then you have something sustainable. But power can be abused, and I've seen power be abused. In every single boardroom I sat in, and I still sit in, I see the abuse of power. I see it on social media. I see it playing out in the global arena at the moment. And we're talking geopolitics, etc., etc. It's all an abuse of power. But we as humans, we yearn for power. So what I've learned is that if you can use power in a responsible manner, then there's sustainability, because that's where true value gets created.
Power for good, and maybe that comes back to something you've mentioned a lot in this conversation, which is the North Star, and being very, very clear about what your North Star is, so that if you are in a position of power, and one can only hope the North Star is in the service of good, that it almost supersedes whatever ego trip you might be on. Ash, to change direction slightly, I mean, in the middle of all of this illustrious career, boardrooms here, big deals here, you've also had time to write a book. Can you tell us a little bit about one where you found the time and the story behind becoming a co-author on Data as a Compass?
Yeah, interesting. That was never part of my North Star. It was never part of my dream. But part of my dream has always been to influence and to share and to help others. And I was very privileged when I was still CFO of UCT. The funny story is I thought UCT was number one in every aspect. But when it came to their processes and their accounting systems, they were very archaic, very paper-driven business. And so I had one dream and one vision, was that to digitize the entire administrative function of UCT. That was my dream.
I actually watched your interview with IDU when you had made that transition. So this is all very fresh in mind.
Yeah.
Congrats on achieving that.
I actually didn't achieve it, funny enough.
Oh.
Because I then decided to collaborate with the university in the Netherlands, who happens to be 450 years old. UCT is 100 years old. And they did it, and they were on their journey to be completely transformed digitally. And so I then entered a collaborative agreement. Funny enough, collaboration would always happen on the academic side and never on the admin side.
Sure.
So I thought, why not, And so we did. And the guy that led the process there, I brought him across to Cape Town and was busy setting them up in South Africa. And I flew him back at the end of Feb of 2020. And then he was just going to get his final bits and then move him and his family to Cape Town. And then he couldn't come back because COVID hit.
Oh, no.
And 2020 was a big reflection year for me. And then I decided to leave the corporate arena. He then subsequently left. But we didn't want to lose our connection to higher education and to what we've learned and what we wanted to do. And so we consulted to higher education in South Africa as individuals. And on our journeys over a glass of Durbanville Hill, Sauvignon Blanc, we would talk about our learnings. And a common thread in our conversation was the power of data and how we as leaders can be data-driven but still work through intuition. But the data becomes that compass. It's just a mirror of what is possible and allows us to make the decisions. And then I had no desire to write a book, but Rob went and wrote a book in Dutch, and he then launched the book over there. And him and I had a chat and said, why don't we launch the book in South Africa? And then, I co-authored the book, and I actually fired it a bit. And I South Africanized it, and I brought the theme of the Springboks winning the World Cup into the book. And I brought my aspirations and dreams into the book as well. But I'm a co-author. I'm not the author of the book. And then we launched. And funny enough, Gibbs loved the book. And we then co-developed an online course called Data-Driven Leadership based on the book. And so Rob and I, we act as industry experts on the course. And we are now taking industry leaders in South Africa and Africa through a course called Data-Driven Leadership.
Ash, I want to go back to a point that you made about how there is still very much so a place for intuition in the world of data, and that maybe one begets the other. What is your feel for that? I mean, a purist data scientist would, I don't know, maybe take a slightly firmer view on the gut feel and the tummy feel. What's your perspective on that?
Change is happening at a rapid pace in South Africa and globally. AI has taken the world over, right? And so we all confused. 2025 was about curiosity in AI. 2026, the first quarter of 26 was about testing AI. But AI is a part of who we are, both socially and commercially. And through AI, data is becoming a lot more prevalent. Data is the new gold in the world. But data is purely a mechanism. It is not the destination. And we must never think that we could make decisions purely on data and purely on what AI says, right? The learning process will continue, it will get better and better. But at the end of the day, it's human beings that shape the world. It's human beings that make the decision. And we make decisions based on experience, based on data, but very much based on intuition, based on gut feel. And over time, having turned 60 now, it's like wisdom comes through. I never really believed it before, but it is true. And you make better decisions, or at least you recognize your bad decisions quicker these days. But when you trust your gut, when you trust your intuition, 9 times out of 10 it's going to be the right decision. So if you couple data strongly, it has to be prevalent. You couple that strongly with intuition, you're bound to make the right decision, I think.
It's a very powerful thing, the power of the gut, and this deep knowing that we have the answers within us, particularly when it comes to matters of other human beings, and that is so important in business. Ash, you beat me to it around the question around coming close to this very significant life milestone of turning 60. And as I understand it, you've taken time to really introspect and look backward and look forward and really think about life and spirituality and purpose in all of that. I suppose these big milestones, hold the mirror up and make us do that. What have some of your introspections been, those that you are comfortable sharing?
It's been phenomenal. The big dreams of the boardroom, all of that's been accomplished, not in the way that I may have thought back when I was 15 and when I was 21. They shaped a very different way. I still feel a bit unfinished when it comes to my dreams in that regard. And who knows when I'm going to find that purpose and result of it. But it's not the be all and end all. But 2025 was a reflection year for me. I have the privilege of turning 60 at the end of 2025. And so I had this whole year ahead of me. But funny enough, the reflection was not so much about the boardroom. It was all about a spiritual awakening and understanding the why. What is Ashley all about, and what is the journey meant to him, and And suddenly you realize you don't have another 60 years ahead of you. You have much less ahead of you than you have had the privilege of enjoying. And so I wanted to spend time with me. And one of my journeys has been to go on a solo Africa Burn experience.
Love it. We need to talk about that.
Yeah. So Africa Burn in its own right had its own preconceptions and misconceptions, I must be honest with you. And then the other is doing it solo. But I had quite a few things to fix about Ashley. I had a very bad COVID experience, and yes, I was going to make a very big decision. And it's only because the hotel room only had 2 floors, it was never going to work for me, that I didn't follow through. But it was a big year for me, and I became claustrophobic, and et cetera, et cetera. And so I knew that being in the desert on my own, because I'm a pen pusher, I'm not a real handyman. So putting up a tent and all those things, it's not an Ashley thing. But being in the middle of a desert on your own, and you have to make it work for yourself, I needed to test myself. And I somehow had this vision of my tent on top of the trailer. I was only going to have a small space to sleep under. And I knew I was going to be claustrophobic, and I needed to get through all of that. So that was one thing. The other was to experience freedom, complete freedom. Africa Burn gives you the experience of 127% freedom and choices, and allows you to bring your values through. Yes, everything that you can think about that happens at Africa Burn does happen at Africa Burn. It does.
We don't need to run through
We don't have to run through
list,
it, but everything else happens as well. And it's your values that gets tested. I wanted to be tested. I didn't know what actually was going to come out of Africa Burn, because I've heard some horror stories, I've heard some fantastic stories, but I didn't know what actually was going to come out, which version of Ashley was going to come. But I was prepared for the test. And that's where maybe the journey of 60 years has come to fruition. Let's try it. Great. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it works, it works. But who knows, right? And so I put myself into that position, and I can stand here hand on heart, the best experience ever.
So Ash, which version of you came walking out of that Tankwa-Karoo?
Ash, you're not too bad, my boy.
Oh, that's a beautiful reflection.
The journey hasn't been that bad, but we have a lot still to do. But you don't need anything to be happy. You don't need money. You don't need a big fancy house. You don't need a big fancy car. You don't need anything to be happy. I experienced what it is to be happy and to be around happy people. Not that I'm not in a happy place, don't get me wrong. But when you have nothing, you can still be happy. That was the biggest lesson. I had no credit card, no cash. I couldn't go buy food. I had to have my own water. And there were rules, but there are no rules. Mm-hmm. And you can be extremely happy, and you can find the essence of true freedom and still maintain your values. Yeah, it was epic.
Oh, I feel very inspired. I chatted to a friend who went to Africa Burn, who I had sent him a song and said, hey, listen to the song. And he said, sorry, I'm on a sound moratorium for the next 2 weeks. I can't, I'm so all sounded out that I can't listen to
24/7.
24/7. Do you like dancing? You like
Love
dance?
it.
There we go. Okay, you found your place on the Binnekring,
Love
did you?
it. I did. What was interesting is I come from a generation that would dance with a partner.
Yes.
I'm a jazz lover.
Langarm? No,
not
quite.
No. There's a difference, Claire.
No.
There's a difference.
Okay.
Jazz.
Okay.
It's very different. But I'm a techno house junkie now.
Did Africa Burn turn you?
It
or
did.
With this? Okay.
It did. Fundamentally. I have a playlist on techno house.
You're going to have to share that with us. We'll pop it at the base of our podcast so people can listen.
But it's amazing. When you're at Africa Burn, there are so many professionals there, but you're never Ashley, the CFO. You never Rob, the rugby player. You never Claire, the CEO. It is just Claire, Rob, Ashley.
That must be so refreshing.
So refreshing. There's no facade. You're not Ashley the dad, Ashley the husband, Ashley the brother. You're just Ashley.
Ashley the being.
Ashley the being.
Yeah.
And when you experience that, wow, it's just wow.
I mean, I could talk to you about Africa Burn.
Oh, and I can talk to you for hours and weeks on end. Maybe I'll meet you there next year.
Love it. Love it. Ash, in moving into closing, you are very clearly nowhere near the end of your career. And I know that because you're on a journey of searching always for purpose, and that will materialize through business and whatever you're involved in. So I'm not going to say looking back on your career. I'm going to say looking back on your career to date, what is the one thing that you're the most proud of? Okay, top three.
Top three, resilience. I think I demonstrate what South Africans are all about. I liken that to the Springbok rugby team of what is possible. I think if I look back, I kind of live that. I'm just me. I'm just a boykie from the Cape Flats. But anything's possible.
Resilience. I like that, and I think you embody that. It's clear in every one of your stories that there's...
And then never allow ego to become bigger than yourself. We all do have ego, and I think ego is important in the human race. But the titles mean nothing, absolutely nothing, if you're not a true human being. I'm going to get emotional now because that's like really true to my heart.
Yeah. My granddad, I think last year.
You think last year? I hope she's not alive still.
No, she's definitely not with us. And I realized that you only get about 2 or 3 words. You know, someone will say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Granny's, headed up." I mean, she was in her late 90s. She lived a wonderful purpose-led life. But you only get a handful of words, and they never... how bad your cellulite was or how rich you were, and for my grandmother, it was absolute kindness to everyone. She was the kindest person any of us had met. And that's all you get. And I think to your point around, being able to shake the ego and not let the ego become bigger than the person is very powerful, to remember what actually matters at the end of life, when...
And I think it's important to know that it doesn't matter whether you're the president of a country, and whether you're the school teacher, or whether you're the person doing the interview, or me being the interviewee. It doesn't matter who that person may be. We all have a story. And we all on this journey for understanding who we are and why are we here. And so sometimes we get carried away as human beings thinking that the title makes us. But funny enough, the title can actually break you. But at the end of the day, we're just little human beings.
Doing it for the first time.
And going through life. And if we can just strive for that purpose, and everything around us, and the journey in the boardroom, or the journey on the boat, wherever the journey is just a conduit and a mechanism, but it is not the destination. We will never quite find it, and that is the beauty of being human, I guess.
What a joy. Ash, thank you. It's been a great privilege to speak with you today. And
thanks, Claire.
Yeah. To our viewers and listeners, we look forward to catching you all for the next episode of our podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.